Now, it's fair to say Mikel Arteta's Arsenal, we're finally getting to see the Arsenal in the image that he wanted. Mikel Arteta is making great things happen for Arsenal, and hopefully we reach the promised land. He has never shied away from making unpopular and difficult decisions from the moment this man has come into the football club. Fans, including myself, haven't always seen the vision, but we've got to remember Mikel Arteta sees football at a different level. He sees things that can't be seen. He sees things that the average man or woman football fan cannot see. There's a very thin line in life between geniuses and madmen, and I think Mikel Arteta in a great way is a mad scientist. Now, I'm sure Mikel Arteta would be the first to tell you he's made mistakes along the road. We got to remember this is his first job, but if you want to achieve anything in life, you have to be prepared to fail and fail again. And I think when you compare his failings or failures at Arsenal Football Club to his successes, clearly the pros outweigh the cons. There's no denying it. You can see what Arsenal's project is. We've got a young manager, a young sporting director, young impressionable players, and kind of experienced but relatively young players with the trajectory to be world class and achieve things for this football club. The Salibas, the Declan Rices, the Odegaards, the Sakas, the Martinellis, the Timbers, the Benjamin Whites, the list goes on and on. It is fair to say the stars are finally aligning. And since we've come to the Emirates, we're finally looking like that the club are delivering on the promises of reaching Bayern Munich level, aspiring to win Premier Leagues and Champions Leagues. Lord knows it's been dark times at the Emirates, but the lights are finally on. And I won't quite go as far as to say we're the envy of the world, because we haven't won a treble like Manchester City and we haven't won multiple Champions Leagues like Real Madrid. But when you look beyond them clubs, Arsenal is now becoming the blueprint of what things can happen when you believe in a manager, when everyone across every fabric of the football club is pulling in the right direction. And Mikel Arteta is the envy of the world. You're seeing us, improve defensively, improve offensively, exploiting from set pieces. We'll be here all day. There's no denying that the stars are aligning. As we keep going on this journey, there'll be many popular decisions that Mikel Arteta makes in terms of retaining and bringing in players on the recruitment front. There will also be unpopular decisions. The players that helped us get this club moving again, get top four, might not be the players to help us get a Premier League title or retain a Premier League title or win a Champions League or win a Champions League again. We have to get comfortable with not everybody is going to be on this journey with us, or better yet, not everybody is going to last the whole duration of this journey. As I said, there's been so many unpopular decisions and there's been many good ones, and it does wonder what next for Arsenal. What will Mikel Arteta do next? Where does he see his team, not just for this season and the improvements and aspirations we can make this year, but years beyond? People, I don't know, but we might as well look forward to see exactly what that means. So then it begs the question, as we've seen, Mikel Arteta at times has cut certain players out from the team or from the starting lineup that seemed like once upon a time they were first names on the team sheet. And it just made me wonder who could be potentially next on this Mikel Arteta chopping block. Who is one of the players that have been key players that Arteta has different plans on? Now, I don't know what Arteta is planning, but in an attempt to do such, let's get into it. As I said, let's get started with a man that was spoken about potentially being Arsenal captain one day and having Arsenal DNA. It's the flying Scotsman, Kieran Tierney. A bit of a cheat code, I know, because he currently is playing in Spain on a season-long loan with Real Sociedad, where unfortunately with Tierney, injuries are a current theme, but he is getting more football heading into the Euros with Scotland. I personally believe Mikel Arteta would have liked to have kept him had he have been content settling for a role on the periphery of things. And I think very few players typify what Mikel Arteta is doing or the direction he is going than Kieran Tierney. As you know, organically, Tierney is a traditional fullback in what we come to expect of the role. Since then, of course, Mikel Arteta has headed into an inverted role, firstly with Zinchenko, then you've seen it with Tomiyasu. Kyrgios kind of playing like a traditional fullback of recent, but he's played in the inverted role, and unfortunately Timber suffered a big injury, but you can see the direction the club is going in. As we go for, inverted fullbacks and have our wide men occupying the width, there's just been no need for Kieran Tierney. I personally think Mikel Arteta would have kept him, but I don't think Tierney was happy with the role he currently was assigned to. And it is quite the fall from grace. I mean, just the other day he was spoken about as being a captain, was one of the first names on the team sheet, was one of the most identifiable players within this Arsenal team, and spoken about as being a potential captain. Unfortunately, anything can happen. And Mikel Arteta has to make difficult decisions. For what it's worth, Tierney gave a great goal of things playing as an inverted fullback, but it's not him. It's like asking a fish to climb a tree. And as I said at the start, Mikel Arteta has to make unpopular decisions to get Arsenal Football Club to where they want to be. As we know, Tierney's days are probably numbered at the Emirates. You can't rule anything out, but you'd imagine in the summer of 2024, his short Arsenal stay, I say short, it's definitely not been, will be definitely cut shorter, essentially. You know, once upon a time, he made 100 appearances for this football club, won us an FA Cup or played a part in that, played 38 times. Since then, obviously, in 2022-23, which was the precursor to this season, he did play 27 times for the football club last year, but 21 of those were as a sub, either an impact player to close games out or to provide us with extra legs as we look to get back in the game. And just 6 of those 27 appearances, apologies, people, were as a starter. So again, Kieran Tierney finds himself on the chopping block, and it's a shame because, you know, I think the fans like him a lot, really, and he doesn't really get to enjoy the fruits of the labor because he was here from the trenches. It is what it is. And then just in 2021, he signed a new deal. As I said, he can leave with his head held high. He's made just short of 100 appearances in the Premier League. He's played 91 times, playing 124 times for Arsenal Football Club in total, with 5 goals and 14 assists. And I think the fans will always have time for him and wish him the best. People would have said Kieran Tierney was harshly done by, and I still believe he was. I still think there was a role for him where we need traditional defensive models. But if we want to be a team that dominates possession all across the field, we need to find those extra percentages. Step forward, Zinchenko. Very few players, in my opinion, divide the fan base as much as Zinchenko. You know, you speak to the Twitter experts or, you know, the traditional football fans, and you'll have a different opinion. There's no denying that. You could see why Zinchenko was signed. He was almost a prototype model, I believe, in introducing this inverted fullback into Arsenal Football Club. And it's like having an extra body in midfield. I mean, why else would you invert? Technically brilliant. Why he hasn't been able to be a number 8 or a 10 for, you know, Manchester City or Arsenal on a regular basis, I don't know. But I'm a big fan of Zinchenko for all his faults. And so is Mikel Arteta. He's spoken at lengths about his versatility, about his intelligence on the field, about how he replicates what we want to play. I think very few players understand the Mikel Arteta collective system more than Zinchenko. And you could see from his Manchester City days, ironically, against us once, and plenty of examples on screen, in that for a possession-based side, for a team that wants total domination in possession, which is a form of defense, Zinchenko is testament to that, really and truly. And I think he's been a revelation to a point at this football club. And I think he's a signing I would like to keep at the club. I know he's been linked with a move away to Bayern, etc. He defo isn't without faults, because for every pro there's a con. We know he's never going to be a natural 1v1 defender. You know, he's probably not by himself, but he's probably going to be a target point for oppositions to exploit. You name Arsenal's strongest 11 and assume Zinchenko is in it, that's, respectfully to him, that's the weak spot. You know, you're not going to get too much change out of Benjamin White, Saliba, Gabriel, and collectively over the pitch. But then there's Zinchenko. Now, he's not been alone, but I look at Chelsea away, I look at Anfield on screen, and again, if we want to be a team that gets to the latter stages of competitions, we probably can't have Zinchenko in games that are going to be even. Personally, I think people need to remember Mikel Arteta said we have one of the thinnest squads in the league. I mean, there's 38 Premier League games and however many, depending on how far you go in the Champions League and the League Cup and the FA Cup. We've been dealing with injuries since August. So I think people need to move away from just because somebody's not in the starting lineup or flavour of the month, that their days at the club are numbered. I think there's different horses for different courses. In games where the sun is shining at the Emirates and we're in a lot of possession and whatnot, I want to see Zinchenko. I do believe, though, as we move away from, you know, being reliant on creativity, just being a pure source from our left back, it's more like, you know, if you have a meal, last season, creativity, that Zinchenko would have been the main meal. Now it's like mac and cheese. It's a side dish. You know, as we get more creativity from central areas and all over the field, I think it's just an added layer rather than a necessity. But I still believe there's games for him. Now, he's been linked with Bayern Munich and all of these clubs, and I couldn't begrudge the club if they wanted to make a tidy profit. After all, he does have only 2 years left on his deal. I do think he understands Mikel Arteta's system. I do think he's a valued member of the squad, an important one in the changing room. I do think we need him for the squad. But I just believe, prior to his injury, Timber probably would have been bad news for Zinchenko. With Benjamin White showing he can do the inverted thing, there's probably less of a reliance on Zinchenko. And I also believe prior to his injury, Tomiyasu is never going to be the best in the final third, in the same way Zinchenko is never going to be the greatest 1v1 defender. I do think he was making inroads. As I said, different horses for different courses, but I wouldn't say Zinchenko's days are numbered. It's more like a demotion from first name on the team sheet to kind of what he was faced with at City, that you're in the squad. And that's what we need. At the end of the day, things can change. If you play out of your skin and you lock down that spot, then it doesn't matter who is there. Now, this next one will bring a tear to your eye. As the president of Hayland FC, as the #1 chief commander of the Emil Smith Rowe fan club, I must admit, people, I am trying to make this video without crying. He's our number 10. He's a Hayland graduate. He typifies everything that we want from an academy footballer: passion, hunger, desire, technical quality. He's our number 10. I've got a lot of time for Smith Rowe. Anytime Mikel Arteta speaks about him, he does very little to play down his ability. We all know he's a very intelligent player. Quality in tight spaces, can play as an 8, can play as a 10, can play as a left winger. But unfortunately, for all of that, the best trait you could have is availability, and in his absence, simply put, other players have taken advantage. Again, Smith Rowe can play in a bunch of positions. He made his name off that left hand side. He wears the number 10, and you could imagine he can play in the 10, and he has flirted with being in that 8 role. I look back earlier in the season, I know Kai Havertz is playing very well up front, but I look when Kai Havertz wasn't quite kind of doing his thing, and you just wonder, had Smith Rowe have been fit, maybe he could have got opportunities in that regard. It did feel for a large part of this season, at least last year, the first half of the season, that left hand 8 position was kind of open season for anybody that wished to take it. In August, I think Fabio Vieira took advantage of that. He did quite well in the cameo appearances, didn't grab the opportunity in the North London derby by both hands. Unfortunately, he's another one that's injured. On the topic of Fabio Vieira, if we just look at the position Smith Rowe can play in, you've got Trossard and Martinelli where the left-hand side's concerned, Kai Havertz, Fabio Vieira, Jorginho, a fit Thomas Partey, whether that happens, Zinchenko, in theory, could all play in midfield. And when you look around the Arsenal team, areas we could improve on and need to address in the summer for next season, yes, we could talk about striker, we could talk about winger, we're going to get on to goalies, don't you worry, people, but central midfield, and that would surely push him further down the wayside. And at 23 years of age, turning 24 later this year, with 2 years left on his deal, you'd imagine maybe the club are thinking, do you know what, he's someone that could bring some money in, especially if for the fees that have been reported, £45 million, which I didn't think we'd be in a position to get that for Smith Rowe. I know he's a Premier League proven player. He's an England international. And at 24 years of age, he has years in the tank. But his seasons that have followed his debut season have been, at best, stop-start, really. He's played 10 times in the Premier League, 16 times in all comps. The most minutes he's actually got were the 71 minutes versus Nottingham Forest and the 73 minutes against Sheffield United. It's a far cry from 2021 when he broke through and got 10 Premier League goals. At the time, I know Saka's probably taking that mantle now, but only Cesc Fabregas could have that. This is a man that was once described by Granit Xhaka as the future of this football club. Essentially, he's playing for a new contract. Again, the club have done very well with sorting out new deals well before they're due. But when you look at the players whose deals are running down, you've got Thomas Partey, who's got a year left in the summer, Jorginho, who there's obviously rumours about giving him a new deal. We've gone over Zinchenko, who has 2 years left on his deal. And then you've got Smith Rowe. Now, as a squad player, if he's happy with the quote unquote happy, because no one's happy not to play, but if he's happy in the role he currently is, then it's great. But one does wonder, at 23, turning 24, being capped by the country, unless something dramatically changes, staying fit and taking your opportunity and showing that consistency levels you've once shown, then nothing is really going to change. And, again, it did feel like this season he was going to get back to his best. He was over his surgery. He obviously played for England's under-21s. It was a case in the earlier part of the season about just keeping him fit and loading his minutes carefully. But it just hasn't gone to plan, really and truly. He hasn't scored for the football club in 2 years, which I want to cry. He's only played about 357 minutes, people. And he's again been plagued by numerous injuries, the latest being knees and ankles. And And again, even though we've been shutting up shop and just running riot in our last recent games in the Premier League, he hasn't been able to be called upon. Quite frankly, I can't say that he should be called upon because the team's doing its job really and truly. If life was fair, we'd all have a lot less. If the minutes in this team were shared out equally among all the players, then we might not be where we are in the Premier League table, which allegedly is first. I don't look at the league table. I will fight tooth and nail for Emil Smith-Rowe. I do think if he stays fit and goes somewhere and gets regular game time, he can be a great player for us once again. But unfortunately, time is a currency that we all are forced to spend. We cannot save it. If he was to leave, playing 112 times for this football club, 18 goals, 12 assists, wearing the number 10, he could leave with his head held high. But one does wonder, what if? What if and what if? I don't think the club will force him out, but maybe if there's an offer that's far too good to turn down, I don't think anyone could begrudge the club for taking it. I don't want Smith-Rowe to leave. I'm sure a lot of you don't as well. He's a fan favourite, but we have to be comfortable with unpopular decisions. Now, it's been a rocky road for David Raya, and he's still yet to convince every Arsenal fan. People will point to Chelsea, towards Luton, and collective games he could have done better. But in terms of his distribution and his overall confidence, I believe he's tying in very well with our new look defense, and he's a justified signing for Mikel Arteta. Unless your name is Aaron Ramsdale, I feel so sorry for Aaron Ramsdale. He signed a new deal recently, was part of our new look English core. Last year was a key member of our title race. Obviously, he was nominated for PFA awards. I think he was goalkeeper of the year. 13, 14 Premier League clean sheets at 24 years of age, 23 obviously a year ago. It felt like we were sorted. For all his faults, Aaron Ramsdale, he does make a mistake, the latest against Brentford. Admittedly, he looks a shadow of his former self. The 2 games he's played since Raya's come in, where ironically against Brentford, he has looked poor. I won't mention the West Ham League Cup. I don't feel Arteta anticipated, the circus that would be around Aaron Ramsdale versus David Raya. Maybe he did, because we've been here with Ramsdale versus Leno, and if it's happened for you, it can happen against you. I think he's a quality keeper at 24 years of age. Definitely, if he could improve his concentration and iron out several gears to his game, I think he'd be a good player for someone. I just think it comes down to the fact of David Raya was the first keeper that Arteta wanted to replace Leno. It couldn't happen then. Ramsdale's provided himself as a good alternative. Since then, it just hasn't gone to plan, essentially, for Ramsdale. And you'd imagine in the summer, he'll be looking for pastures new. And I reckon he could bring in the most in terms of an incoming fee. It feels weird adding Thomas Partey to this list. I mean, in a day and age where our manager is inexperienced, our players are learning on the job, and you've got a player that's very experienced, 30 years of age, played in the Champions League, been around. And I actually think when fit, keyword whenever that is, I'm not too sure. I think he's our best central midfield player, excluding Martin Odegaard, who plays in the 10, who can play as an 8. One love to Declan Rice. I love Declan Rice. The man's absolutely mustard. And I think all us Arsenal fans, while we like what Jorginho is doing, we like what the team's doing, we did like what Granit Xhaka and Partey did last year, to potentially see Thomas Partey, Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard as a midfield trio, I think collectively that's one of the best duos in Declan Rice and Thomas Partey in the Premier League. And as a trio, you don't get much better than that. It's got the steel, it's got the grit, it's got the legs, it's got the high intensity pressing that Mikel Arteta demands. Unfortunately, in what's been a title challenging campaign like last year, Thomas Partey's been on the peripheral things, essentially, and we're trying to guide him back to full fitness. I think Thomas Partey, there's a reason he's described as the octopus by his own teammates. When fit, whenever that is again, he's amazing. And you could argue, when you hear the way Mikel Arteta speaks about him, the fact that initially in August he was even playing him right back, Arteta's been forced to find a solution and do without Thomas Partey. We finally saw a proper fit season from Thomas Partey, where he played 33 times in the Premier League last season. And 40 times in all comps. That has to somewhat indirectly be correlated with our title challenge. To be honest, at the end of the season, his form fell off a cliff, like with all the players. On form, the man's amazing. We were all over the moon when we signed him for 45 million. Unfortunately, the best ability you can have and the best trait you can possess in your arsenal is being fit. And Thomas Partey, there's no point waffling about how great of a footballer he is if we rarely see him. Arteta's had to do without. I don't know where you would rank his signing, because for 45 million, I think the ability has been worth it. But in terms of the consistency, the durability, the reliability, these are all question marks with Thomas Partey. Since joining Arsenal, I calculated it quickly while making this video for you. He's actually missed 72 games. I'll never begrudge a player for not being fit, but I mean, come on now, folks. It's absolutely ridiculous. I think in terms of ability, Mikel Arteta would love him. As I said, when we've got a young, impressionable team learning on the job, back in the Champions League, debut Champions League campaign for the manager and the vast majority of the players, Partey should be a reliable man. He should be someone with his club and international experience that we can rely upon. Instead, that hasn't been the case. Last summer, allegedly, the club wanted to move him on. Whether he was able to move him on the wages he's on, I don't know. And I think the club will look to move him on again. I think they're going to give Jorginho a new deal, bring in a new central midfielder. The other existing players will kind of plug the gaps. And if there's capacity to get rid of Thomas Partey, I think we will. It'd be interesting, though, because he does have a year left on his deal. If you're potentially trying to buy Thomas Partey in the summer, would you necessarily give Arsenal the fee they might be seeking for a player which, in a couple of months, you'd be able to agree a free transfer? Is Thomas Partey keen on leaving Arsenal? We're moving closer as a football club to the glory days. Obviously, he's on nice wages. He's in his 30s. He's had a kid, I believe, and he lives in London. And he might want to run down his contract so that, he can be attractive as a free agent, really. So it'll be interesting. Where you look at Smith Rowe, Zinchenko, who are contracted for 2 additional years, the name Thomas Partey has to be on a list at London Coley as to what to do. And where you look at, regardless of age, we're tying down key players. Obviously, we've brought in a few, but, the Sakas of this world and people of that ilk have all signed new deals. We should be, talking about Thomas Partey signing a new deal. We should be nervous at the fact that he hasn't signed a new deal. And I think the fact that we aren't simply says it all. As I said, the best trait you could have is being available. I think he's got a lovely range of passing. He's got great recovery runs. The man's all over the place. And he's truly an Arsenal midfielder. But unfortunately, we never see the guy. He's got a fantastic shot on him as well. But we never see the guy. And I have to admit, it has been an underwhelming signing, not in terms of ability, but in terms of all the other added things that come with being the full package. We just haven't got it from Thomas Partey. Where you look at his injury record at not AC Milan, at Atletico Madrid, apologies, he has been linked with an Italian team. He's barely injured. Only God knows, Thomas Partey, and internally at Arsenal, why this man cannot stay fit. And it's a shame, because the man is an effing fantastic footballer, really. I think him and Declan Rice as 2 6s/8s with Odegaard, it would be amazing. And again, I think you have to pat Arteta on the back that we've been able to maintain a title challenge with the amount of injuries we've been dealing with since August. And that's something we're going to have to get away from. You look at our team, there's not too many players that are durable and that will be fit for the majority of the campaign. But I do think, unfortunately, Thomas Partey is on the Arsenal chopping block, people. And it is a shame, because he's a good footballer once again. I also imagine Haaland grads Reece Nelson and Eddie Nketiah's futures will be subject to speculation as well in the summer. I mean, they do go down as 100% profit where FFP is concerned. I don't think we can sell all the Haaland boys, but decisions have to be made. This journey to get this football club back to where it belongs and on newer grounds, winning Champions Leagues, winning multiple Premier Leagues, it's a tough one that not every player can help us with. Some people will last the duration, some won't. But I do think in every unpopular decision made, we can rest assured Arteta and the boys are doing everything with the common goal of getting this club back to where it belongs. And as I said, newer and higher heights. And who knows, there'll probably be another player that's not mentioned that could be someone that is sold, really. Don't forget to let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe. Road to 70,000. I'm out.